And I must tell you, California is in the house today. Our guest speakers from California, come on up, Reverend Dr. Jerry. Reverend Dr. Jerry is from San Diego, California, and he and his husband, also Jerry, were both licensed practitioners at the New Thought Center for Creative Living. I almost said spiritual living. Yep. And Reverend Dr. Jerry was also made the senior minister at that center. And he also served as the founding board member and now director of shelter operations of Urban Street Angels, an organization that provides housing, employment, and life training for homeless 18 to 25-year-olds. And he's also a staff minister at the OM Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. And he's administrator of the affiliated New Thought Network, which is Anthem, that is a collective, an organization of New Thought churches, of which Creative Living Fellowship is a part. He also holds a master's degree and a Doctor of Divinity degree from Emerson Theological Seminary. Dr. Jerry's husband, Jerry, made his transition in October of 2018. As a result of his experience in dealing with the human emotions of loss and grief while trying to remain grounded in his own spirituality, Dr. Jerry created a heart and mind opening workshop, The Search for Inner Peace, Being at Home in the Muddy Water. That's the workshop he will be presenting for us today. Meanwhile, he's going to be talking with us today, and we love having him here. So why don't we welcome him just by stretching our hands out to him and welcoming him by repeating after me. Dr. Jerry, we welcome you here. We love you. We bless you. We open our hearts and our minds to your message today. Thank you for being you. And thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everybody. Good morning. It is an honor and a privilege to be here. So wonderful to be back at CLF this morning on a cool winter day. Y'all don't have so many cool days. I know that, so it's a great joy to experience that, and probably for you as well. Every time I'm here, you have the most amazing music. That was just so wonderful. And the Gods in the House band, you guys are phenomenal. Just so great this morning. Thank you. So thanks to Reverend Dr. Sherry for the opportunity. Wonderful to be with you this morning. My topic is honoring and celebrating diversity, or just say yes. Might have heard that somewhere before. So when we hear the word diversity and inclusiveness, we often think of others of a different racial background or sexual orientation or political affiliation or spiritual affiliation. But today I want to take us in a little bit of a different direction, honoring and celebrating the diversity in our life experiences. We're going to talk about things we in this teaching don't talk about very much. We're going to raise a little heaven this morning. So I'm so glad you're here with me, because as all the ministers in the room know, as we're talking with you, we are always also talking with ourselves. So now that we're in this teaching, and if you've been in this teaching for any time at all, you know that now that we're in this teaching that we call New Thought or religious science or science of mind or whatever you choose to call it, everything works, right? The 202 is always clear. You never have to worry about traffic. The Cardinals always win. The Diamondbacks always win. The Sun Devils always win, right? Right? Yeah, I know, right? Everyone is well and healthy and live long and happy lives. Everything is wonderful, right? Somebody said Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Or you might have heard that before. In this teaching, and it's wonderful, we tend to focus on the positive, that all is well, that everything is as it should be, that everything is in divine order, all of those statements that we share with one another. And the truth is that all is well. The truth is that everything is in divine order and everything is as it should be, and they're in a better place, and all of those statements that we tell ourselves. That's the truth. But the fact may be very different. The fact may be that we're grieving, that we're hurting, that we're angry, that we're resentful. Do we allow ourselves to look at what we're feeling, or do we cover it all up with all of those other wonderful statements? Do we allow ourselves to find that inner peace and be at home in the muddy water? Or do we cover them up? Do we cover up our feelings with what is called toxic positivity and spiritual bypass? And we'll talk more about both of those concepts with you later in the morning. Are we able to feel what we feel? Because life is amazing and joyful and wonderful and abundant. And life is also can be kind of difficult. I love the Golden Girls. If you're a Golden Girls fan, will you raise it? Oh, wonderful. I'm so glad. My dear friend in Knoxville and I are both members of the Golden Girls fan club on Facebook, obviously, and so we bounce lines back and forth based on our life experiences, and we text one another back and forth. And I have said, we have agreed often that, you know, if we used all the brain space we had for lines from the Golden Girls for curing some incurable disease or creating world peace, we could totally do that. But instead, we've got that filing cabinet in the side of our brains with all those lines from Golden Girls. I bet if I asked you to, you could break into a chorus of the Pina Colada song. I bet you could. If you're too young to remember the Pina Colada song, I don't want to hear about it. But for the rest of us, we remember. It's amazing what we remember. We remember wonderful experiences. And we remember what we judge as terrible, hurtful experiences. And sometimes we carry them with us, those memories, those feelings, for years and decades and centuries. And so often we make our choices in life based on remembering those experiences and what we believed at the time. In an absolutely wonderful book, The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown, and it's in your bookstore this morning. I happened to notice it this morning. She writes, "Owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we will ever do." Remember it was Gloria, wasn't it Gloria Gaynor, "I Will Survive"? Yes. So feeling that as we're moving through all of that. In the book, Brené Brown writes about perfectionism. That it's no, all is well. Everything's fine. It's rainbows and teddy bears. It's just all is well. She writes about perfectionism. Perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. Perfectionism is not about healthy achievement and growth. Perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfect, look perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. It's a shield. Perfectionism is a 20-ton shield that we lug around thinking it will protect us, when in fact, it's the thing that really is preventing us from taking flight. do we allow our hair to, and do we allow our hair to not be perfect? Do we allow our makeup to not be perfect? Do we allow ourselves to feel what we feel? Or do we cover it all up with, no, it's okay, all is well? Interesting question for us in this teaching, or at least it certainly was for me. So my story is, and Reverend Dr. Sherry mentioned it in my bio. My husband Jerry, also Jerry, and I had been together for 33 years, and he was diagnosed with colorectal cancer in 2017 or so. And he was a registered nurse, so he knew what was going on from the very beginning and very kindly did not tell me about everything that was going on because he wanted to protect me. So, and denial, not just a river in Egypt. Denial is the most wonderful thing when you don't want to see what you don't want to see and don't want to feel what you don't want to feel. So he's going through chemo, and the chemo is doing really very successful things related to the tumor, but was also doing terrible things to his physical body. And if you've had that experience with cancer or live with someone or been with someone who had cancer, you know that very often that's what happens. And so seeing, and if you've ever been through this experience, you know, seeing the experience of someone you love, their physical body going downhill and getting thinner and getting weaker, it's horrendous. And I think I probably started grieving when he was diagnosed, and so kept going through the process, and he kept getting progressively worse. And so in October of 2018, it was time for the Anton, the Affiliated New Thought Network conference in Kansas City. And since I'm the administrator, I had to go. And he's sitting on the bed, he gets up, packs a few things because he was going to go with me, and then sits down and rests, and then packs a few things, and then sits down and rests and says, well, maybe I shouldn't go. And I said, well, whatever you want to do, I'm certainly fine with. Again, keeping in mind that he knows exactly what's going on. I'm just thinking so the oncologist at UCSD said there's not really anything else we can do for you, but we're going to go here, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. So I was staying very positive in my wonderful denial, whereas he knew what was going on. So we wound up going to the conference, and Tuesday, so we're there Sunday through Friday. Tuesday night, he fell getting up to go to the restroom, and I said, okay, it's time to go home. But you just get he had the distension in his stomach from the fluid retention, and you would just get that drained, and you'll be okay, and we'll do something else. And so on Wednesday, flew from Kansas City to Houston to connect from Houston to San Diego. And it was a little different on Wednesday, did just a little spacey, didn't think too much about it. But when we got to Houston, he was in a wheelchair, and we went to the gate, and I left him to go check on the seat assignments, and came back, and he was unresponsive. So went to the desk, they called 911, they're coming, they're all of this, and so the paramedics are there doing what they're doing. Now, my Jerry loved to be the center of attention. And so in the middle of the terminal the United Terminal in Houston, he's lying on the floor and they're working on him. And I said aloud, Jerry Lee Collins, if you die in the middle of the airport, I will never forgive you. And his spirit smiled at me and said, it's okay, I'm done. So they revived him, got him to the hospital, but his heart stopped again between the airport and Memorial Hermann, and they weren't able to revive him, and so he died in Houston. It was the most amazing experience because you know, through this thing called life, and through these experiences that we have, and through the absolute heartbreak, there are always those glimpses of spirit. And so I'm in the family waiting room at the hospital, and they've just told me, and so I need to call people. I need to call his family in Kentucky. I need to call my family in San Diego. And this 6'4" bald EMT technician that was one of them that came to the airport and got him, came into the waiting room and said, this guy that I had never met before and never will again, says to me, I don't work tomorrow. Here's my phone number. Really cute, by the way, but that's a separate story. Here's my phone number. If you need to go anywhere, if you need to do anything, call me and I will take you. Amazing kindness. So I'm in Houston. I live in San Diego. What do? So I texted the executive director, my dear friend, for Urban Street Angels, and let him know what happened. And it just so happened that he was in a Bible study with one of the other board members who is an attorney. So this guy quickly calls me and says, okay, so here's what you do. You call the Neptune Society tomorrow morning. You do this and you do this. I would have had no way of, what do you do? I mean, what do you do when you have a body in one state and you live in another one? So, took care of that, flew home, picked up all the luggage, because I had all of mine and all of his, went home to the empty house, and United called and said, we're so sorry for your loss. Is there anything we can do to help? Amazing, and yet not. So here I am. So I'm going through the motions, and you call this person, and if you've ever been through this experience, you know there's a lot of stuff to do. And so you go through all of this, and I'm starting to feel, I'm not surprised, but I'm shocked. Do you know what I mean? Because at some level I knew what was coming, but at the same time, it's a shock. So I'm going through this, and I'm starting to allow myself to drop into my grieving and my hurt and my anger and all of those other things. Excuse me. And my ego says, no, he's in a better place. It's all God. Everything is as it should be. And when I recovered from that, I said, yes, but I get to feel this. We get to feel this. We have to allow ourselves to feel this. So often we label these emotions as good and bad. It's good, all is well, you know, the platitudes that we've talked about, that we should on ourselves. We shouldn't feel anger. We shouldn't feel hurt. We shouldn't feel whatever that is. But when we do that, we wind up with grief about our grief, shame about our shame, resentment about our resentment, and we could be here the rest of the day, but you get what I mean. We have those negative feelings about our negative feelings about our negative feelings. There's that label that we'll talk about later. As Reverend Dr. Sherry mentioned, I work with Urban Street Angels, which is an organization that offers housing to homeless 18 to 25-year-olds. in San Diego. Really amazing program. We have as many as 60 formerly homeless young people in our program. They're with us for 9 months, and they are either going to school or working full-time. We teach them about money management, about relationships, about finding a job and keeping a job. And we have about a 94% success rate, which is pretty amazing. But sometimes, now see, there's an interesting question. Was this a success? Sometimes it doesn't turn out the way we would have preferred. And as you well know, the universe says, this is what you believe. And ministers and practitioners, you know this, and I would say that if you've been in this teaching more than a month, you're a practitioner. You might not have a certificate on the wall, but you're a practitioner. And life says, okay, you say this is what you believe, will you buy what you're selling? And ministers and practitioners, you absolutely know. We get, are you going to buy what you're selling? So to make a long story even longer, early last week, one of the young people in our housing program committed suicide by running out in front of traffic and was hit by a car and died. And so I had the opportunity to take this to a very personal, because I had met him several times, and so I had the opportunity to take this to a very personal level again and talk with the peer-to-peer counselors in the program and remind them that because so often when someone dies young, we look at the situation like it was such a waste. But was it? Maybe they were only supposed to be here for 18 or 19 or 20 years. Maybe they were on their path, and so, yes, everything is as it should be, but we have to allow ourselves to feel that grief that we feel. Do you have, don't tell anybody, but I have a junk drawer. I wish. I have a junk drawer, I have a junk closet, I have a storage unit. Do you have those things where that's where the stuff is, using a purely spiritual term? And so that, you know, all the batteries and the Phillips screwdriver that I can't find to save my life, and just all of those things. So we put the stuff there. So often we put our feelings, our emotions that we judge as wrong or bad, down in the bottom of the drawer. And if we just pile stuff on top of it, then nobody knows it's there and we're okay. But see, I don't like the word challenge. The opportunity with these emotions that we feel is, no, I'm okay. I'm angry, I'm hurt, I'm afraid, but it's okay because I know this teaching and we'll just go. And then something happens, and we're at Costco, and somebody's parked sideways in the entryway. My card's gotta be here somewhere. And you're like, for the love of all things holy, didn't you know that you needed your membership card before you got here? And you just explode. You have never had that happen, but. The point is that if we don't allow ourselves to feel what we feel, to grieve, to hurt, to be angry, and process it through, then we're all composed and everything is lovely, and it just comes out on the 202 going south with somebody doing 50 miles an hour in the left lane talking on their cell phone when we're late to a doctor's appointment. You, of course, have never had that experience either, but you know. We have the Interstate 8 in San Diego. It's a similar kind of a thing, you know. One of my favorite authors, Debbie Ford, wrote, "What we can't be with won't let us be." Can we be with these feelings? Can we honor these feelings as being part of our experience? If you've ever taken an antidepressant like Prozac or Zoloft or one of those, you know that what they really do is just take out the peaks and valleys. So you don't get upset so much, but you don't get joyful so much. And so often when we're living with these unexpressed emotions, that's kind of what happens. Brené Brown in her book talks about that by knocking off the lows, we also knock off the highs versus allowing ourselves to live life full out. And we'll talk about just a little bit in the workshop this afternoon. Forgiveness. We're right there. I forgive you. You sorry. My beloved friend Martha Creek said, "Don't arrive till you get there." Don't arrive, and you can use that in your book, actually, if you want to, and quote her. Rev.Sherry, I just found out, is writing an awesome book on forgiveness, so more news to follow on that. But we're being so holy and so understanding by forgiving maybe before we're ready. So we'll talk about that this afternoon. Sometimes we have a belief, and I have to admit that I went through the process with this as well, that when something happens, when a dear one makes their transition, when you lose that job that you absolutely loved, when something traumatic and dramatic happens, that it'll never be the same again, that life will never be good again. And the truth is, it won't be the same again. But it can be different, and it can be wonderful again, just in a different way. It's so important for us to recognize that. As we do that, so as we process these emotions, as we allow ourselves to feel what we feel, we get to the other side of the muddy water and we rekindle the flame and recognize, yes, he was only 53, and I so wish, but that was his path. And so what I can do is continue on my path and allow myself to, again, rekindle the flame. So we do this, and we allow ourselves to live this experience, and we keep our fork. There's a great story about an elderly lady that was preparing to go on to her next experience, and she was meeting with her family and talking about her last wish. She said, "I want to be buried with a fork." And the family said, "Why in the world?" Well, if you've ever been to somebody's house for dinner and you've had your chicken and your Brussels sprouts and your whatever that you're supposed to eat, the ideal situation is keep your fork because the good part's coming. The cheesecake, the chocolate mousse, the whatever, keep your fork. So as we allow ourselves to process, to move, to keep moving, to be at home in the muddy water, through all of this, we keep our fork and know that life has wonderful experiences yet for us. And we have to be fully present in order to experience them. Would you join me in the light for just a minute? So as we stay in this consciousness of oneness, we allow ourselves to be reminded of our oneness with the God presence, with one another, and with all of life. And what we know and accept and feel in this moment is that as we're one with all that is, we're also one with those experiences. We're one with those feelings that we maybe thought we shouldn't be feeling. And in this moment, we allow ourselves to release that word should, and instead to live life full out, to just say yes to whatever it is, to allow it, to embrace it, to feel it, so that we can move forward as the essence, expression, and experience of Spirit and say yes. We give thanks for the opportunity to be together this morning for this amazing spiritual community. And together we say, and so it is. Thank you all so much. Namaste.